reading just a little bit, and then we're going to actually act it out, and I'm going to ask the children to help me with this most. So, but let me start us this way before we get to the text. There was a piece in the New York Times quite a while back, actually, from a travel journalist, Eric Weiner, so not the politician. He said, there are locales where the distance between heaven and earth collapses, and we're able to catch glimpses of the divine or the transcendent, or as he likes to think of it, the infinite whatever, right? Now some people call those places thin places. I think I've introduced that phrase before, thin places, where somehow we experience God here on earth, and how did we get that? But then he says that we believe God transcends time and space. And then he also introduced this phrase that Aboriginal people say, that God is everywhere and every when. I've never heard that before, every when, right? Like they made up a word, but like that God is every when. So then, just here's the question. If God is everywhere and every when, why aren't there more thin spaces, right? If God really is everywhere, why don't we feel God all the time, right? Why do we seemingly experience God in specific places or specific times in our life? I think we all can relate to that. So the writer goes on to say, maybe we're too thick to recognize the thin places, right? And he doesn't mean that the way we say, like, oh, you're too thick, but like, right, we're corporeal, right? We're body, we're flesh, and so maybe we're too thick to experience these thin places all the time, right? And so I'll be honest, and I'm happy to talk to any of you about this offline, but since Pete's death, I've actually experienced really bizarre experiences with him. What I say bizarre because it's challenged not my understanding of heaven, but it's challenged my understanding of earth. I have felt like there have been many thin places, and then I have felt like there are times when I wish I could talk to him, but I'm just too thick to be there with him, right? And so then why am I sometimes able to experience this thin place? What makes that possible? What turns from thick to thin? How does that happen, right? Does God help that happen? Am I helping it happen myself? Although I will tell you that if I am, I'm not sure what I'm doing, right? And so I ask these questions as a way to set up the story today. Our story is one where Jacob, the patriarch, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, experienced a thin place. I actually, when I've been preparing this sermon series, I'm calling it a portal to God, that he experienced this portal somehow to God. And so this is the story in our Lenten series, right, that includes the verse that's on the front cover of your bulletin that says, surely the Lord is in this place and I didn't know it, right? And I think that many of you have had experiences where you were in a place and all of a sudden God seemed very present, or something divine, something transcendent, something everywhere, every when. And you can say, wow, God was here, and I didn't even know it. I didn't know God lived in this place, right? So we're going to act out our story, but before we do, I want to give a little backdrop on Jacob, right? We have several important stories in the Bible about the patriarch Jacob, right? The first is the moment when, well, not the first that I'm going to mention today, is the moment when he bought his birthright with a bowl of lentil stew, right? And I'll be honest, Lee brought a fantastic lentil stew, where is she? To me a few weeks ago. I'm not sure I would have sold my birthright for it, right? So Jacob was a twin, and he came out second, right? So his brother is a minute older or so, right, than him. And it says that when he was born, he came out and he was holding his brother's heel, right? Which some have made a lot out of that, like as if he was grasping, and his name kind of means that, but it also it doesn't have to have negative connotation. It could mean that he was fascinated and needed his brother, right? Like his brother was about to leave and they were in this womb together for 9 months. No, like, right? It makes sense that he would reach out, right? So Jacob has this relationship with his brother. His brother's the oldest, and so by theory, he's the oldest. I'm the oldest. How many first children we have here, right? Okay. I don't know, I'm not selling my birthright to my siblings. I love them. I get to be the first, right? So Esau, though, sold his birthright for lentil stew. Maybe it was really good lentil stew. The second story, and he did that with the help of his mother. I think that's important. The second is when he stole the blessing. So he didn't even sell it. He stole the blessing that was rightfully his. So his father, who was blind by this point, was to give Jacob a blessing. And his mother and him concocted a plan that they would steal that blessing from his older brother. And there's even talk in the text, if you read like a couple chapters before, where they insert God into it. There's a redactor that has put, well, God, wanted Jacob to be the patriarch and not Esau. And I'm like, that's nice, but that was added after, right? So his father is blind, and Esau comes in. His father asks, asks Esau, go kill me something, make me a good meal, come back in, I'll give you a blessing. His mother, Rebecca, hears it and says to Jacob, come here, we're gonna make your dad his favorite meal. You're gonna go in, I'm gonna dress you like your brother, you're gonna smell like your brother, because your father's blind anyway. He's gonna bless you, it's gonna work out. So now picture Jacob goes into his father, right? He has a meal, but it doesn't sound like Esau. And so Isaac even asks, is that really Esau? Come here, let me feel you, because it says that Esau was like a man's man, he's hairy. And Jacob had smooth skin, is what it says, right? And so Rebecca had put like fur or game or some kind of something on him, I don't know, right? And he walked in and Isaac, touched him, and there he was. Oh, okay, well, all right, doesn't sound like Esau, but I guess it is, because it's you feel like Esau, right? So he gives him a blessing. When Esau came in, and this is one of the very sad parts, I think, of Scripture to me, one of those times where you really feel it. Esau comes in and he realized what has happened. And in this horrible plea, it's like a gripping plea. He says to his father, no, Father, but please bless me too. And Isaac says, no, your brother got the blessing. That's all I've got. And he will have the family's blessing. And Jacob will be the one that carries on the lineage of his grandfather Abraham. Jacob will be blessed so that he is a blessing, just like Abraham got that promise. So Jacob obviously realizes what he's just done to his brother, right? And he's a little scared, as he should be, because if I was writing the story, the older brother would then go chasing after the younger brother, kind of beat the crap out of him, right? So his mother says, you gotta run away. Go to my family, Laban. Find a wife, live there, you'll be safe, right? So Jacob runs away, and this is where we catch up with our story today. We're going to read the story, and then we have some stations around to explore the story today. So I'm going to turn it over to Aaron to help me read the story.
So we're going to read the story together, and then Pastor Beth is going to invite the kids to act out as we get later in the story. So any kids that want to come act out, you guys want to come sit in the front row? Jalinda and Georgiana, you want to come sit in the front row so you can come up and act out when you're ready? And you're ready too. All right, so this is from Genesis 28, and we're calling this The Voice. So Isaac, this is Isaac, called Jacob to him, this is Jacob, blessed him again and instructed him.
You are not to marry one of the Canaanite women. Get up, go pack your things, go to Paddan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and find a wife there among Laban's daughters. Laban is your mother's brother. May the all-powerful God bless you, make you fruitful, and multiply your descendants so that you will give rise to nation after nation. May God give to you and to your children in this inheritance all of the blessings of Abraham, so that you might someday possess the land where you now live as a foreigner, and land that was promised by God to Abraham.
So Isaac sent Jacob away, and he went to Paddan Aram to Laban, son of Bethuel, the Aramean and brother of Rebekah, Jacob and Esau's mother. Now Esau saw that his father Isaac had again blessed Jacob, and sent him to Paddan Aram to find a wife there, instructing him not to marry any of the Canaanite women. He learned, too, that Jacob had gone there just as his father and mother both wanted. So realizing his father did not like his Canaanite wives, Esau went to see Ishmael and took Mahaleth, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's other son, and the sister of Nebaioth, to be his wife, in addition to the 2 others. Meanwhile, Jacob left Beersheba and traveled toward Haran. As dusk approached one day, he came to a place where he could stay for the night. He saw stones scattered all around and put one of them under his head. Oh. Then he lay down to sleep. And during the night, God gave him a dream. He saw a ladder set up on the earth, and its top reached to the heavens. He saw some messengers of God ascending and descending on it. God stood over, above, beside Jacob. And then God said, I am the Eternal One, the God of Abraham your father and the God of Isaac. The land on which you are now lying is the land I have promised to give to you and your descendants. Your descendants will be as many as there are specks of dust on the earth. You will spread out to the west, east, north, and south. Through your descendants, all the families of the earth will find true blessing. Know that I am with you. I will watch over you no matter where you go. One day I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done all that I have promised you. The dream ended, and Jacob woke up from his sleep.
There is no doubt in my mind that the Eternal One is in this place, and I didn't even know it.
But even as he said this, a bit of a fear came over him.
This place is absolutely awesome. It can be none other than the house of God and the gateway into heaven.
So early the next morning, Jacob took the stone that he put under his head, and he set up a pillar, and then poured oil on top of it to commemorate his experience with God. He named that place Bethel, which means house of God. Before that, the name of the city had been called Luz. And then Jacob made a vow.
If God is going to be with me, keeping me safe on this journey, and giving me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I return to my father's house in peace, then the Eternal will be my God. And this stone I have made into a pillar will be the first stone laid in God's house. And Lord, of everything you give me, I will give 1/10 always back to you.
The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Thank you.
So you have 4 stations, and it's just about 10 o'clock. So the first is, you can come play around here, right? So here's the rock right ahead. Like sometimes it's good, you know, what I love about these Genesis texts, especially like Old Testament big stories, is that they're really life-size characters. They're not meant to be flat characters. And so sometimes it's actually good to try to act it out and feel like, how would I feel if I was Jacob? Or what do I think about angels coming? Do they come from the down, or do they come from, what do I think about that, you know? So you can come play around here and interact with the story. There is some artwork up from Marc Chagall that depicts both the blessing of Isaac, or the blessing of Jacob by Isaac on the right, and then the ladder. He has actually several of the ladder, so I just picked a few that you can go just kind of look and see what you think about that. So these are kind of reflection, and then we've got 2 stations here. One is just if you want to go sketch, like how would you sketch it if you want to sketch yourself in the story, if you want to sketch Jacob or whatever. So there's a table with pencils there and paper. And then on the back wall, there are rocks and instructions for a more tactical experience. So if you want to, it essentially says go take a rock, go back to your seat, and then it gives you some questions to think about yourself in the story. You know, if you were Jacob, and it asks about your fears, right? Jacob was clearly afraid of his future. He was worried and concerned, and so it asked you to think about your own worries and concerns and how would you do if God was in the place of your worry, essentially, right? So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 stations. We're going to take 10 minutes, that's it, to interact. If you don't want to do any of these, there's quiet meditation in room 3, and so you can go and take the questions that are in your bulletin. If you prefer to do that, come back in 10 minutes though. And then we're going to wrap up together and kind of talk about the story. So there's Bibles too, if you want to reread the story, if that's important, Genesis 28. Ready, break. Go do it. Godly play questions. We used to do this all the time. But what was your favorite part of the story? Or what?
About Jacob, how he got lost.
Okay. What was your favorite part? Favorite part of the story?
I don't know why, but it's like this desperate, intentional deception. I don't know why that's my favorite part, but there's just like something favorite about it.
Yeah.
Like why?
Oh yeah, we have this ridiculously intentional, deceptive story in the scripture. Yeah. Sure. Favorite part? What do you think the most important part is? Should I have started with, do you have questions about the story? I'm wondering why everyone's so quiet. Confusions about the story? The most important part.
The
Yeah,
father.
what do you think?
You want to believe, but you don't believe that there's.
You see his ladder?
He was here, I didn't even know it. That happened a lot, I'm sure. You know, so it's like, I guess my favorite part of the story is how human a lot of it is. And I also like the angels being around. Are we right or wrong? Is God here or is he not here? And how do we know?
Yeah. And Jacob seemed to know when he woke up that something was unique and holy about this place, right? So, but he didn't before, right? And that's pretty human. I agree. Yeah. Someone else, the most important part?
I think I find it also significant that despite the deception that Jacob underwent, I guess, that he still found favor with God. Like there was no retribution or there was no described response from God to what Jacob did to his brother.
Right. So God showed up and was seemingly gracious and very
Right.
present to a person who was intentionally deceptive and knew it. Like, I mean, he was very aware that he had done something wrong because he was running away. Yeah. Yeah, God is gracious even in those places. Yeah. Someone else about the most important part,
I just
Lee?
wonder what happened to Rebecca. Did she make consequences for thinking of all this up?
Yep, I did a lot of reading this week, and a lot by Jewish rabbis, so a lot of midrashic reading, which is not what you get if you read from Christian scholars. And to many people, Rebecca is kind of revered because she knew that, like somehow she knew that this was the right thing, this is what God wanted, right? And that she figured out a way to make sure that the normal plan of events did not happen, right? So she kind of cut off the system. The system would have blessed Esau and not Jacob. And yeah, that was a fascinating part. I was like, oh, so she, and that God, earlier it does, like I told you, it says that this is what God wanted. So there's you can assume from that God had somehow spoken to Rebecca. And if that's the case, then she's the first woman God spoke to. Bill, what do you think is the most important part for you?
I was thinking about holding on to my brother's heel, allowing me to be born. And the whole notion of helping me go from a dark inside place to the light with the help and the assistance of my family or my brother.
Yeah. That Esau on some level led Jacob out of the womb. That's an interesting part. Someone else an important part? Leslie, what do you think?
I think the dream is kind of one of the really important parts, and it's like he takes this dream really literally. And afterwards he says, if God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, I will give, and will give me, he's like, it's almost like he's bargaining with God. He's saying, well, okay, so you say you're gonna do this. If you do this, then I'll do, he's kind of a negotiator.
Yep. Yep. Which we all kind of do that from time to time in our life, I think it's important to know at what point did you negotiate with God, because I think all of us have one of those stories. Some of them are obvious. I negotiated with God when I was 14, my parents were divorcing, and I remember saying to God, if you never leave me, then I'll do what you ask me to do. Right? Like as if I had a place to negotiate with God. But I did, and I think that we all, in maybe obvious times, maybe not, we do negotiate, if you do this. So he was acknowledging that there's something special and God is being gracious and God is with me. I'm not sure I buy that you'll do that forever though. So if you keep doing this, then I will keep being the patriarch. Anyone else? Favorite part? Where are you? Oh, go ahead, one more. Favorite part, or most important part?
I say a proto-Christian idea, it's very mean to take advantage of somebody's disability.
Yes, right? They did this for their blind father. Yep, yep. Oh gosh, I read another midrashic thing. That Isaac was blinded because an angel cried. Oh, when Isaac had to sacrifice, when Abraham was sacrificing Isaac, that an angel cried into his eyes and that's what made him blind. That's like a midrashic reading of it, right? Which would say he'd been blind for a long time. Yeah. Where are you in the story? I know that's a more vulnerable question, but if anyone's willing, like where do you find yourself most in the story? Which, can only be for today, too. Tomorrow might be a different person.
Well, I only have one child, but still, I would do pretty much anything for her. And I can sympathize with Rebecca. I mean,
Yeah.
Rebecca's probably the better person in the story that's doing what she did, but still.
But yeah, what you would do for your son or your daughter. Yeah. Rebecca, anyone else where you are in the story?
I think I resonate with Esau after the blessing is already together. Like, what about mine?
Yeah, please do that.
Yeah.
Please. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else, where are you in the story? All right. I'm gonna let Aaron come up and lead us in prayer.